Good morning. Good morning, everybody. It is Friday morning, 24th, Friday morning, 24th of the 3rd, and I have just finished my tour, and I feel fantastic. Nah, not really. I feel like shit. And it's okay to say that because everybody believes that we've got to be always happy and always upbeat. I just come off night shift, 5 days night shift, 12.5-hour shifts, supposed to do 7. I was a bit sick for the first 2, but I'm 9 days off my antidepressant medication that I've been on for 4 years. So my safety blanket has sort of been pulled out from me. So easy to say, I don't feel fantastic, but at the end of the day, when you've been relying on that little safety blanket for all of those years, it's easy to understand why you would be able to fall into some anxious, negative sort of thoughts for why I'm not feeling that great today. So. Wait till a few viewers get in. Today, if you want to talk about COVID, if you want to talk about Ukraine, if you want to talk about the banking failures or that sort of stuff, come see me tomorrow. Today's not that day. This isn't the live for you. I had a good week. I had a really, really good week at work because if you believe anything about what's going on in the spiritual nature of the world, it is forcing our shit to come up to the surface, whether you like it or not. So the crutch of that is it doesn't really matter whether you believe the bad guys or aliens or devils or or anything that you believe in your thought process. It is going to make you feel like shit. And I've been preaching on a fair bit about my journey, which I understand a lot more now with the spiritual, physical, intellectual, financial, and emotional being the 5 pillars of balance for life. And it resonated with me back then when I started the mental health company, but it never really, I don't know, it didn't have the grounding that it has now because I've learned a lot more through my wife and her sort of energy healing about how to explain better. I don't know more things necessarily about the energy side of it. I take in information to allow me to be a better presenter of layman term information for people who haven't quite been able to connect all the dots yet. Okay, so I'm just sort of giving you, I would say, edge pieces of the puzzle. A lot of people are just sitting there looking at all of these pieces of the puzzle and just going, oh my God, this is going to be too hard to put together. So it's basically, can someone do it for me, or push the puzzle aside, or look for an easier path. So basically, I look at myself as trying to get some edge pieces or some corner pieces and give that to you, so you might be able to build the framework around it. Because at the end of the day, if you believe that we have to have a physical battle, if you believe that we're having a mental battle, like being smart enough to fight, if you believe that you're having a spiritual battle, all of those things require your energy and your body to be at its peak to be able to do that. So physically, we need to be not obese, and we need to be not completely out of shape and not tired and depressed and sad. So physically, if you want to fight a physical battle against these people, if you want to go and join the Russian side to kill the Ukrainian Nazi type scenarios, or defend ourselves from trying to come in here, you're going to have to be physically able to do that. Mentally, you've got to be making these decisions all the time about who to follow. Even the truth movement are always arguing that sort of stuff. You've got to understand legislation, and you've got to understand the fuckery of the government with all of the rules and regulations and stuff that they've created falsely. So the whole point of what I keep saying to you about spiritual, physical, intellectual, financial, and emotional is just being able to put enough time into all of those things to continue to work on yourself while you're fighting against the enemy. Now, a lot of people believe in manifestation, and they say what you focus on and what you believe will manifest your future. Okay, and so a lot of people will say, thinking about the world being in war and thinking about poverty, starvation, potentially thinking about collapses of financial things. If we continue to all think like that, then we will manifest that in the future. But I don't necessarily see preparing for possible situations as envisaging them happening. There is a lot more people who in this world that help to collectively manifest the reality of the world than just yourself. So we are a collective. If everybody in this world is negative and one person is positive, by default, that person will have a hard time maintaining their positivity because they're so encapsulated by everybody else's negativity. So just being positive yourself doesn't mean that everybody else's, that your experience in life is going to be positive. It just might be better than the person sitting next to you. So now, why do I care? Why do I care about that sort of stuff? Well, I like to be able to explain, particularly to men. So if you're women on this journey, and hello, Craig Sharkey, you're one of the men who I understand knows a lot more about the way the world works and the way a man works, and you have connectivity through the peace and harmony that you have where you're staying, and also through a martial art, which I find a lot of people seem to be a lot more grounded and connected when they have trials and tribulations against their own mentality, physicality in those sorts of realms. So I was talking to some guys at work, and believe it or not, in Underground Mind, I managed to find an audience of people who are willing to listen to what I'm talking about. So I try and take a little bit of the 3D realm world that we're used to, the physical explanation of the matrix that they've got you believing in. I take a little bit of people's biblical stuff, and I take the spiritual stuff and my wife's energy stuff, and I transform them into something that I think is palatable for people. So what we've been talking about at work is about the fact that trauma is what has been holding everybody, is what holds everybody back. But understanding, when we say about this trauma, what does it do and why does it do it? So the chakra system is basically what Leah has been sort of learning about and been sort of explaining to me. And the reason why it is an integral part of the way that the body works in our energy system is because we can see and understand how a tree works, but yet we have been told that we don't work anywhere in the same way. So the chakra system, or the energy system, believes that the crown being the top, where the sun gives you your light and your energy, your third eye, the pineal gland, is where you envisage things with your light better than what you can see with your physical eyes. Throat chakra, heart. Okay, it is solar, sacral, and root chakra down at the bottom. I'm sorry, I can't get right down to the bottom. Now, you don't really want to see that far down on me. I might lean it forward if I'm going to be pointing at it. I don't really stand there pointing at my chunk. Now, when we push, when we supposedly have bad, negative energy, we tend to push that down the scope, or even just by weight, just by sheer density and negative low frequency, it sits lower in our body. Now, the way that I was explaining to everybody is that when you have traumatic experiences in life, and this is good for men, what men tend to do is they push it way down in their guts. A lot of people think we push it back into the back of our mind. I don't think so, because I tend to think that we push it back in here. You get confused up in here, but as we move forward in the world, we understand that the microbiome sort of gut relationship, the gut health relationship, I don't know the big fancy words enough, so the gut health relationship with our brain is a critical part of how our body functions. I would feel more sick in the stomach when something is agitating me and have an anxiety response in my brain than what I would actually feel sick in my brain, if that makes sense. Like when I have a headache, it's because something in here is telling me I need water. I don't open the top of my brain and pour water onto my brain. It's something that's physiologically telling me that I need something, and therefore the pain is activated up here. I hope that makes sense. So if you can envisage having trauma and it comes in, the energy, you receive it, your light, your ears, all that sort of stuff, trauma's got to come into your area of perception and receive that in there. And somewhere it's got to be stored, not in the brain, but it's probably stored in the brain, but it's physically stored. It physically reacts somewhere in your body. So you push it and you suppress it down into your lower areas below your heart. Now, this chakra is apparently supposed to handle your power. The next one down handles your sexuality and sexual type responses, and the bottom one, in the root chakra, is the area in which you have your grounding. Now, I was talking to him and I'm like, all right, bear with me, coal miners, because, coal miners and men in general have a hard time in sort of thinking of that. So what I tried to say was, I try and take it out of a human, because for some reason we've been indoctrinated to not believe in the human. All right. So I take it up to a tree for them, and I'm always like, well, what do you do? What happens if you ring bark a tree and take the poison? Does it send it up to the branches and leaves and that sort of stuff, or does it take it down and sort of hold it down into the roots, and that's where the rot starts? You know what I mean? If it's dry and it's a terrible drought, where does the physical sort of start manifesting? It starts up here, with less leaves and that sort of stuff, but it tries to continue to pull all of the trouble stuff and energy down here. But this is where the water is, this is where the sugar is, and this is where the decisions are sort of made for when it's right and it's prime and it's working well. That's where the growth is up the chain of the tree. Even though the sun is the thing that's giving it energy up to here, that it's bringing back down to its core. So if you can imagine the tree being what I'm trying to describe with a human, is that we suppress all of our shit down there, and then we operate, particularly as men, in power, sex, and safety. So the root chakra is your safe area. Okay, that's where you feel the strength, that's where you feel the core. And once you're operating down there, well, it's sort of like the 7 deadly sins. If you've seen the vibration levels all the way down here, with love being the highest vibration, if you operate only in love, then your vibration will be the highest. But down the bottom, you have guilt and greed and gluttony. So what a coincidence that down here we have our operating system that is feeding on power, sexual, and safety all the way down here. So we get this horrible sort of churning of bad negative energy down here, and that's our protective system sort of working down there. And it's no coincidence that where we see our kidneys and our adrenal glands and our stomachs, who horrendously these days have conditions of bad health. Like probiotics is a big thing these days. Lactose intolerant these days. GMO, not GMO, gluten-free type things, all upset stomachs. And what do we know about anything that's upset down here now? It comes from, it triggers some bad sort of reactions up in our brain, because it's all sort of interlinked. So if you can imagine that all your trauma and all your shitty stuff is sitting down in this area here, and you're only operating out of a place of power and safety, well, that you could also understand that what happens the first time you allow yourself to feel a bit of that trauma come up, or when you feel a bit of when you do a bit of work on trying to release your trauma, as I've been asking everybody to do, is the first place that energy rises as you start lifting your vibration. The first place it hits is your heart chakra. And what does it feel like after you've had a traumatic event in your past and then you relive it? You instantly feel with your heart, oh, fuck, oh, yuck. I don't like that, and I don't feel in charge of that. And that was the reason in my past that I locked that away. I got it pushed down here to where my feeling, where my strength is, where I believe my power is. And so continues the circle. So that the trick is understanding that to get past that heart, you've got to feel that trauma, and you've got to get rid of that shit, and you've got to push that up past here so that you get that full system flowing again. Because even if you can only allow yourself to believe in a physical sense, anything that's down there is not good for you. And that's where colons, cancers are. That's where stomach issues are. That's where all of the things that we see really prominent lately is all down in that sort of area. But it's also that male-dominated, testosterone, ego-driven power, sex, money, and safety for us apparently is money. So the more money you have, the more safe you are. So root chakra is like, oh, bring all that money, bring all that water, bring all that energy down into here. Now, if a tree brings all of its energy down there and keeps it down in its roots, the same way as a crop does, like a crop, when you grow, let's just say you grow a bushel of wheat. I'll draw it green, you probably can't see that. But a bushel of wheat, when you grow a bushel of wheat, people understand when to harvest it, because the bricks content is the sugar content in the plant. And sometimes the plant at night protects itself and it brings the bricks down to the bottom. I think it's BRIX. I think so. And it brings all of the sugars down here to protect itself from nighttime, from frost and cold and that sort of stuff. And then at certain times of the day, it pushes it all up into here to have the health of the kernel. Because remember, it's not there. It's not growing to feed you. It's growing to propagate a seed to replant itself and therefore extend its life, like everything on this planet. So it wants to make sure it puts its goodness up to the top there, so that when it reseeds and when those seeds fall off and stuff like that, it gets its best things up there. It doesn't want to keep it down in here. There's no point having it down there, okay? Because it's a one-use plant. You know, life cycle, grow, drop, reseed, plant. Trees, yeah, a little bit different. They got a longer life cycle, but they are still doing the basic things. But just like that, if you were to keep all of the goodness down right here in the root chakra, this part up here would all start to fade. This reproduction part would start to fail. All of the, the physical aspects of the tree would look like shit. No leaves, poor branches, and those leaves, what do? They're part of the cyclic system of the sunlight and the moisture and the carbon processes that they do. So very much like that with a human is that if we only work down in those bottom areas, then we'll never give the energy back up to the top areas, and there's no flow for that energy through our grounding because we're so blocked up full of shit down here, and just these aren't getting used for what they're supposed to be getting used for. So tree metaphor, if you've just jumped in, is to try and help us understand, particularly strong males, to not feel like we're in some sort of spiritual higgledy-piggledy journey, but we are, absolutely. Because what I said to these people was the first time that they start to bring that up, and the first time they have that feeling of trauma, like I had the other day, I'm working through this process and I'm opening those channels, and I tell you what, when that shit starts bubbling up, and this year it will bubble up whether you are working on it or not. Understand that your trauma is getting microwaved like a bat out of hell, and it is going to come up. Have a look around at the people, have a listen to their words, and have a little dig to your workmates, to your family, to your friends, and they are all feeling this uncomfortable, this disease that Leah always says that, this disease is actually dis-ease, and that's that feeling of chronic disease through all these areas here, through all of your parts of your body that just aren't working well because you've just got all this negative, traumatic shit locked away down in there. And as soon as it comes back up here, anywhere where you should deal with it, the first thing, like I said, the first thing you feel is, I don't like that. I'm not in control. I don't want to feel that way. And you just don't have any faith that you're going to move past it. So you push it back down there to the first part, power. Push it back down to where your power is. So I was hosing the other day, and I think I told the story in another video, but I was hosing the other day, and song popped in my head, Cow to the County, and I was sort of humming myself, the Cow to the County, and up, I feel it up and coming up and up, and I don't know why something in that song triggered me. I think it was the part where they said, you don't have to fight to be a man. I was singing the part where it said, you don't have to fight to be a man, and it just triggered something in me that made me realize that, like my trauma as a child, my stepdad was pretty harsh with my mum, and as a child, whether he was the worst abuser in the world or just an average abuser, whether he just had his trauma that he was reflecting onto her, or whether he had no reason to do it other than the fact he was an arsehole. I believe he had massive amounts of trauma. I believe that they had family history, thousands of generations of people just passing trauma on that trauma-driven cyclical cycle of what the Matrix and what the bad guys have created. This constant, repetitive, struggle, trauma, negative energy, fear, sitting there and then operate out of the ego as a defense system for never wanting to feel that way again. And so your trauma ends up turning into some sort of ego, arrogant, defensive type position, which then affects the next generation and affects the next generation. So I held no ill will for him in the way that he was as a partner, as a stepfather, as a brother, as a son. Okay, he didn't have the tools given to him to break down the trauma that was passed down from his father or his family or his experiences, and he kept them all locked away, and that's bitter, angry, low, dense guilt, gluttony, greed, all of those yucky sorts of low vibrational sorts of things. So I don't hold anything about a negative against that anymore, because without that, I would be exactly the same if I hadn't had someone like Leah and my critical sort of thinking to continue my growth and journey and understanding why I was doing exactly the same thing to my children in a different way. I was never gonna backhand Leah, although sometimes I deserved it more than she would. But the point of it was that I just needed to take pieces of those informations and understand why, because I just wanted the cycle to stop. I wanted it to stop with me. Now, you might not believe in all of the spiritual nature of these things, but you might all think this is physical, and you might all think this is, well and truly just a three-dimensional sort of reality, and that's okay. You still want it to stop. You still want the cycle of the bad people doing what they're doing, manipulating us through money and power and that sort of stuff. You want that to stop, but you also want to look back at, whatever was traumatic for you in the past, and you want to make sure that you don't pass that on, because how many abusive kids that were brought up in an abusive relationship, with abusive parents, maybe to each other or to you, end up sort of pushing that down to themselves. That what they see, what they do. Cheating relationships, drug relationships, alcohol relationships, very quickly trickle down to the next layer, and the same thing happens down at this layer, and you don't like it. You have this feeling that you don't like it, you don't want to be that, and you fight. Most people fight so hard to get away from that, but they don't really understand why they're still doing it, even though they didn't like doing it. And for me, it's just like, it was just like, this is it down here, because it's not just the brain. Everybody thinks that we're operating in this brain, and as long as I think it, that's rubbish. When you're using intuition or discernment, when you've got, like, I've got this bad feeling about this guy, I've got this bad feeling about the situation. Nobody says, I've got this bad thought about this guy, I've got this bad thought about the situation, because these are the areas down here that control our safety. It's our root, it's our core, it's where we retreat to when we're not good. If, like I said, just like here, the energy out of this tree, if it's spring and it's blooming and there's enough rain and the sun's out, this thing blossoms and it starts to grow. The moment it gets cold and it gets winterish, it drops off anything it doesn't need to feed in its leaves, and it pulls all its energy back down here, and that's where it stores its energy, because that's where its safety is. So anytime you are put into a traumatic experience, you aren't blossoming, you aren't bright, you aren't high vibration, you're not running around with positive thoughts, you're not feeding anything up here. This thing's left to starve. Okay, it's only left with negative shit. It's only left with yucky stuff, and you're not operating in your heart, because you go below that. So you go down into this safety mode, lock it all in. This is, my power is my safety, and my retreat is my comfort zone, and that's how we operate. So then, particularly for men, like I said, the cycle of this sexual safety, power-driven sort of mentality, you can see how that operates, and you can see why so many of the diseases that start in here and here and here and here and here and here and here for us are really toxic. They allow us to pretty much continue life, but they leave it with a real toxicity. The other part of it is we just don't want to feel heart worthy. But when you're not feeding the heart, or for me, when I wasn't feeding anything through that heart, after a while, what happens to you is you start starving for what the heart needs, and the heart needs energy, and the heart needs connectivity to the rest of the body. So when you start looking for something to externally make that heart happier, that's where you get that whole scenario where we talk about buying pleasure, taking external things and putting it in there for pleasure, looking for somebody to say that you're worthy, external love for you instead of self-love. Yeah, and you can't have your self-love if you're operating in fear and depression and anger down in here. There is no self-love, because you're just not engaging this part of your power part. So, you're outside looking for drugs to make you feel happier and have more fun. You're out for, you can't go to a barbecue with friends and do anything but drink, even though your friends should be, enough to be it. You've got to drink with your friends. Like all of these things that you're already reaching for. I need a new car. I need a new motorbike. I need a new something. I need a new something to fill that constant feeling of whole, or say not whole feeling inside of you, because the gap is in here. And any time that you actually allow yourself to feel from the heart something that is internal that fills that gap, oh man, what do you reckon about that feeling? What do you think that feeling is worth compared to driving that new car off? Because driving the new car off, it has a month, 2 months or whatever, and then it's gone. That trip's gone, and you're out looking for something new. You're out, oh, that car looks cool, or I didn't notice that car recently, because you're out looking for fill that little external sorts of things. So you think about why just the feeling of something loving from yourself, doing something that you're so proud of, finishing something, creating something, taking some time for yourself can feel so much more rewarding than anything that you can buy externally to put in there. And who loves you buying things externally? The bad people. Who want you to be in that cyclical sense? The bad people. Who activate every opportunity that they can to make you work in a low vibrational state, in a state of fear, in a state of anger, in a state of greed, in a state of gluttony. All of those things operating out of pride, all of the things that are on the spectrum of high vibration, love, empathy, all those things, down to low vibration, they know how to do that very well. Even if they don't understand, even if they don't understand exactly what they're doing, let's pretend that they're not all satanic worshipping pricks. They understand how to make the system work very well. They keep you sad, anxious, depressed, down here in your safety zone. You're operating in somewhere in that power thing. This is safety and retraction is my power. And if anybody comes near me, I'm stabbing you, get away from me, because that's my power. It's not embracing, it's not love, it's not come on in, I've got enough energy for everybody. They know how to keep you down there. They also know that will create a gap. They also know that makes you out in the world continuing to do that. They also know that means spending money. And spending money means that you are therefore tied to some sort of financial system that either keeps you working or keeps paying tax. Whichever one you look at it, working for money is swapping your time of your life to have money to buy the things that they tell you through this circle is necessary. So, it's time for us to start understanding that even if you want to fight against the system, you are still in the system. You are still being driven by the matrix, even if you're angry and you're awake enough to say to these people, you're bad people. Even if you're thinking that this person is the bad person, the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab, dust them off right now. I'll give you the power in your mind to take those people, stab them, gone. All right, they've left the planet. We've wiped them out tomorrow. Click your fingers. How do we feel? How long do you think it would take? Are you going to instantly feel better? Is the work relationship with your money and your expenses better now that those bad people are gone? It is still very, very highly likely and possible that someone, because you're operating down in here and you're not willing to let that trauma come up and you're not willing to heal it and expel it out of your body and let the natural energies of the world feed you, you're looking for these AI-driven realities of something to entertain you, something to make you feel better, something to, pass your time. You're still looking for that. So there is always going to be the next bad person. Always has been. This guy hasn't been, the guy that we're all focusing on at the moment, Bill Gates, he hasn't been around for 2,000 years, and yet you can always find a war in the past, people bickering over what religion and that sort of stuff. Rome is a great proof of that. I watched the Roman Empire the other day, I don't know, something like that. Rome was broken into all these sorts of areas, and each one had their own ruler, and at some stage they all had a massive fight, to be the one ruler, and they were all the people that were fighting together were friends under. They weren't Christians. I can't think what they were. Were they pagans? Is that what they were? I can't think what they were. But they were this. So say they were all ones. All right. So they all believed in the one, and then somewhere along the line, the leader decided that he didn't believe in the ones anymore. He wanted to be the zeros. Well, it's true. Just changing that part of themselves, they turned on each other. And within 5 seconds, people that had stood side by side had turned on each other and started stabbing each other. Bill and Joe that were standing side by side the previous week fighting against somebody who their common goal was to unite themselves under one leader, and everything would be all cool. They changed the 1 to the 0, and then all of a sudden everybody was stabbing each other. I mean, we've been doing it for history, and that's part of the reason why I talk about the Bible. And I'm sorry, Juanita, who's just written a little comment on the side there. It's too big for me to see with the biblical side of it. It's why I'm very hesitant to believe that the biblical writings from thousands of years ago are anything other than another soul trap to convince you to fight against all those that aren't you. I mean, today in the modern age, you don't see too many Christians walking down the road spitting on Muslims or anything along those lines. There's an underlying beliefs that might make you, stay away from those people, or might not necessarily congregate with those people. But it's not an out and out sort of bitter fight like it was back in the days of the Roman empires, and back in the days of the times of Jesus and that sort of stuff, with all the different slaughters and massacres that have happened, throughout history, particularly with Jewish and Judaism. So, we don't see that as much these days, although it is still rife over in the third world countries where they, fight against each other over that sort of thing. You got to understand that it's either our interpretation of it that says that we should need to go out and convince everybody that our way is right, and if they don't believe that our way is right, well, that puts our way at risk. So we need to kill them all and take over their country. I don't believe that. I believe that sounds like a man-made thing to me from get-go to woe, that puts us into this state of fear, anxiety, sickness, and power, because at any time that you're not operating in the heart space, you're operating in the power space. A heart space would never, ever allow you to stab the enemy that doesn't believe in what you're doing. The power space would. The safety space would. Okay, the reproductive space would. All of those things would tell me that it is okay for me to destroy my enemy and remove them off the planet, so that I can keep repopulating the world with my seed, because my power is eternal and my safe space is my beliefs, and my seed should be the seed that comes forth in this world. Okay, that to me is what this operates as, because I couldn't, as anybody that could genuinely believe from the heart space and actually getting their energy where they're supposed to, and their beliefs and the system working fluently, you could never see them wanting to go and inflict harm on somebody who didn't believe them, because their heart wouldn't allow you to do that. Hence, again, why they create things to keep us down here, because it keeps us busy, keeps us fighting, and keeping us operating from somewhere where our body, should not be operating from. So, but it doesn't mean that the biblical senses aren't real. It just means that to use your intuition and use your discernment to believe in the way that you want to believe. And it doesn't mean that you have to roll over the top of everybody else. I lived my entire life through trauma, horrible trauma when I was younger. Might not be the most traumatic situation, and it is, but it is a trauma situation that pushed me down into here and created a defense system from my power space. So my power was bullying and pushing back on people. So I became a bully, and I became nasty and negative, and I attacked anybody that would come near my power system. And anytime anything would push up to my heart, it would make me feel sick, like it did the other day. I cried like a baby when I thought about the fact that, I felt so guilty that as a young boy, I couldn't stop the situation that I felt was happening. Whether it was as dramatic as what I thought it was at 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, you have no comprehension of what the real world issues are, but that is enough for you to be in a traumatic situation. So I cried like a baby. I had to come find my wife. And my wife consoled me and she said, I warned you that, you needed to be ready for this, and you need to let the pain come up, and you need to let it rise up, and you need to let it come out of your body, and it's going to hurt and it's going to feel uncomfortable, but you need to also embrace that you are letting it out of your body, and that you don't need to operate in that egotistical power zone anymore. Let it come to your heart space, let yourself feel it, and let it go, because otherwise you are literally in the Matrix's version of that crush point, and sooner or later it is going to come to the surface. So, Juanita, that is religion, which has been totally infiltrated to create divide. Correct. Thank you. I just couldn't see what the bottom of it said, and I didn't want to insult you by by saying that. Just sitting here saying anti-Bible sort of things, or anti-religion sort of things. It's got to the point, right, where they even where we even sort of believe there's 1,000 different stories for what the journey of the people on earth are, and it's just to the point of what is necessary for you to believe, for you to stay in a positive frame of mind and grow and have energy and have power and have work, operate from the heart space, and be in a high vibration and not feed off those guilts and gluttonies and greeds and all those sorts of things. That's it. Because I was sitting right down here, like I had the greed, my power, and my root chakra was pulling all the money and all the wealth so that I could be safe and nothing could happen to me. The power was like stab anybody that would attempt to block me or stop me from doing anything. So that that was down there, and obviously it's like the children's senses too is always like that reproductive. I am strong, I am powerful, I'm wealthy, and I am safe. That the whole lot of it is just a horrible way to exist, and you get no real feeling of wholeness until you do that. Now, my little daughter the other day, 3 years ago, my little daughter was 2 and a bit, and she's in my office. We've got multiple computers in here. I won't turn it around because it's pretty messy, but we've got multiple computers and multiple screens from her past life with multiple companies, and she's sitting in there at 2 in between us with this old crappy laptop, and she's tapping away going, I'm sending an email to my boss, who being a bit annoying, and this sort of stuff. And we're like, oh, shit. And she clearly heard that from me, what I mean? Like, and then now she's responding to it. The other day, she comes out and she says, she's 5 now, and we've trying to change everything that is about our ways and remove ourselves from the matrix and the patterns that they have created for us. And she says, if anybody would be interested in coming into my Reiki room, I'm now open for business. So I walk in and I knock on the door, and she says, come on in. And she has found in one of the little computer games in there, she's found a tone of a frog and a cricket croaking and cricketing, I don't know, and making a cricket's noise, and it's quite peaceful, but it's nothing to do with Reiki. She's just found it, and she knows that is the sound in her mind for peace. Just this nice little sort of pond swamp cricket, And she's got a little thing laid down on the floor with a little pillow, and I get to lay down on the floor like this, and she comes, sits above my head. She doesn't understand what she's doing, and nor does she need to at that level, because she's still just operating out of love. And with the sound on, she puts her little fingers on my head that she's watched her mum do it, because her mum does it. Sorry, I can't get my hands to work because I'm looking at the reverse of the camera. And she puts her fingers on the side of my head, and she spends 2 minutes just silently holding my head. And I can tell you, there is no experience in this world. There is no experience in this world that I could have paid for that could have replicated the feeling of love, not only for the fact that she was giving me her time and her effort to try and understand something that is greater and bigger than what we can see, but also the fact that she, in 3 years, had also come a full circle from the representation that I had been giving to her as a human, that everything had to be busy, everything had to be stressful, everything had to be on the computer, we always had to be connected to work, I was always taking phone calls, I was always angry, I'd come home from work because of my anxiety and my depression, I'd come home from work going, this bloke, I'm scared of this bloke, this bloke, and even just my conversation was angry because it was my power space, and there was no heart, there was no feeling. Like, I certainly wasn't sitting at work having multiple conversations this week, with people that are going through some bad shit and they don't understand why it's bubbling up. And I'm like, I've been telling you, it is going to come up whether you like it or not. Would you like to deal with it at work? Would you like to deal with it when you have financial issues? Or would you like to deal with it when you have the opportunity to deal with it through some soulful thought and some meditation? Because I can tell you now, the best time to do it is through, in a nice, quiet environment to meditate and let those feelings sort of come up and think about them and deal with them. Now, you're not going to be able to just go out of off this live and go, I'm going to change my world. I'm going to go and sit down, I'm going to meditate, I'm going to bring up some shit from the past, from the Uncle Bill that used to bloody touch me when I was a kid. I'm going to bring that up. I'm going to feel a little bit shitty, have a little cry, and then move on. I'm going to be clear. Well, this shit's been going on for a long time for me, trying to go against it. Now, Leah's had just as many traumas, but I believe that she had the same amount of pain, but she moved through it reasonably quick because, one, females have this a lot better connection to the real world and connectivity and creativity. I mean, anybody that can create a baby in their belly other than a transgender woman is likely to have a more spiritual sense, have a more understanding of connection and know what that is, having that physical connection, it's growing a baby inside yourself. It's got to be something that men, will struggle to understand with, but some men get it. But I had that ego tie for so many years, 10, 15, 20 years of that ego tie that I am protected, don't come near my space, don't touch me. Even just the feeling when people sort of touch you in a feminine nature, it's like, ooh, yuck, that feels gross, get it off me, you know what I mean? Like, I'm a man, I'm powerful, and so I wouldn't have been 3 years ago. There's no way 3 years ago I'd be catching up with people underground and have them reach out to me now because they know that I talk about this and they know that I have things on mind and they know that I have a lot deeper understanding, even that what I'm willing to talk about to them until they're comfortable. So they chip away, And this one's for you, Cal. Like we had these little standoff conversations of, how far down the rabbit hole are you? What do you think about this? Because we're so terrified that if we said something too far, that person might be like, well, I don't know what you're talking about. Let's not talk about that stuff. That's weird. Oh no, I wasn't talking about that either. I meant bloke stuff. Like, did you watch the fight on the weekend? Oh, like smash it up. Like, oh yeah, I rode my motorbike and did a bloody mummo. Like just back to the man stuff, back to your power spot, back to your safety spot. Because God forbid you'd have to be operating in here or anywhere up here and get found out because we're men. So it's been a beautiful journey to not only meet all the new people on the path that I'm on at the moment, the truthful path, but also to truly understand that no matter how hard we fight against the system, no matter how many bad guys we find, because this is one thing that I've really come to the realization of. When you create a state of fear and anxiety and trauma inside yourself, it means that you have an enemy. Now, that enemy was the thing that put you in that traumatic state that pulled you back into a defense mode. So whatever that is, whatever that was for you, whatever caused your trauma, you put a shield up. So some people call it building up a wall, some people call it build a shield, but whatever it is, you retreat to a place where you're safe and you don't move forward until you feel sort of more comfortable and more safe. I don't think you can do that without the heart, so you keep the shield up. But what you will do is you will recreate that situation over and over, like I said in that video the other day, where the men at, I think it was, is that you will recreate that situation because the only self-worth that you have is your ability to beat that bad guy. So you will, wherever you go in your relationship, you will marry that bad guy. And then you'll have to defeat that. You'll have battles against that bad guy and you'll have to defeat it. You'll go to work and you'll find that bad guy at work and you'll defeat that bad guy with words of physicality. And you constantly will rehash the same situation that caused that trauma if you want to go out into the world. So if you're strong enough to go out into the world, you will find that situation and you'll rehash it. And you will be the hero of your own story because you couldn't do it in your own trauma. You weren't in control of your own trauma, so you look to create the situation and control it in whatever way you want. I'll show that arsehole I'm not working for him anymore and I'll leave. I'll show that husband of mine that I chose in the first place and picked him exactly for the reason that trauma caused me to, and I will make his life misery and I'll take the children and I will cause them havoc, or I will cause my wife pain, and when she takes the children I won't pay her any of the money and that will make her life difficult. Whatever it is, it doesn't really matter. You're just looking to create the enemy so that you can be the hero of your own story because basically you couldn't control what it was that gave you the trauma. I've done it for years. Every mine I go to, here's here's the enemy, look at me, I'm the hero, I will destroy that person through words or physicality, and when I win, look, the world will be a better place and my trauma will be solved. It still sits there, it repeats itself. Next person to punch, next person to argue with, next mind to go to, next job, whatever it is, it'll still be repeating, and you know that yourself. So that's why I say to you, the self-work, everything, the answer to what you're looking for is within. It is inside here, and you need to open that channel and get that shit out and be operating holistically with all of your energy going back and forth through your body like the tree. Otherwise, you are going to be starting to wilt and starting to fade and starting to fall over, no matter how powerful you think you are, because you're not using all of your systems, and that trauma will eventually squeeze its way out. And this year, particularly because of what is going on in the spiritual sort of sense of this world, that shit is going to bubble its way up. So it's going to come up, and that's why I say spiritually, physically, intellectually, financially, and emotionally, those 5 pillars, one of those things is failing. 1 or 2 or 3, sometimes even 4 is failing. And what do we do when we're good at something? So say you're really good at the spiritual, all right? So then it doesn't matter if you're fantastic at the spiritual, if you know everything about the Anunnaki, popular race, and the 4th dimensional astral projection, things, if you're not still smart enough to protect your body physically while you're still in this 3D realm, intellectually grow yourself and make sure that you don't lock yourself into a corner and have only what you think is true and nothing else could be truer. Bible type people, it's just like Jesus is coming, there's no other way, the rapture is upon us, and anybody that doesn't repent will die. Well, you backed yourself into a corner, put all your eggs in one basket, and good luck to you. Hope you're right. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to keep opening every book that I have to and reading every bit of information through my intuition and discernment that allows me to best to deal with that and make my body whole and make my body work the way that nature intended it to do, much more than just a heart and a lungs and some muscles. I said, and then financially, the manifestation part, full circle back to the manifestation part, is understanding that, I don't want World War III, and I'm not trying to manifest the fact that it will happen by talking about it or thinking about it, but I'll be damned if I want to be taken out of this fight. For all the work I've done and for all the information I've done, I want to be damned if I want to be taken out of this fight by not having food and water ready for me and my family when shit gets real, because the bad people that are getting taken down, they're not going to just bend over and take it. They're going to make this shit as goes as long as you want. So it doesn't matter whether it's physical, biblical, or spiritual. It's not as easy as just dust your hands and it's done. It's going to be a battle. So whether you believe it's a physical battle, whether you believe it's a mental biblical battle, good versus evil, whether we believe it's a spiritual battle, it's still going to be a battle. So you don't have to manifest war, and you don't have to stick your head in the sand and say, as long as I pray, everything will be okay. I'm not manifesting that I want the war to happen. I'm just telling you that in my spare time, I'm putting some water over here, I'm putting some food over there, I'm putting some fuel over here, because all of those things will help me stay in the battle. The longer I can still continue to feed and water myself and my family, the longer I can stay in the battle. Doesn't mean I want a war, doesn't mean I want to see suffering, doesn't mean I want to be right. It doesn't mean I want to walk around the town while everybody else is starving and bent over and homeless and sort of going, told ya. That's horse shit. I just want to be able to fight for what is right, and I want to be able to do it for the longest time that I can. So knowledge is the power in preparation. So financially, collect yourselves, get rid of your cash, buy your gold, buy your silver, transfer your money for something that is tangibly to be saleable or tradable should something go south. But emotionally is the last one. So spiritually, we've talked about, getting in touch with that power and that energy through chakras or whatever belief system that you have. Basically, it's all the same sort of framework. People have just dissected it over years. I mean, physios and chiros don't walk past each other in the street and go, and go at it, because they have 2 different belief systems. They understand that each does their thing and each has their own place and each has their own belief, but that doesn't mean that they have gang wars against which one is right and which one is wrong. They just accept that this is their practice, this is what they wanted to do, which was to help people in their way to relieve the pain of nerve pain through chiropractic or through physiotherapy or through Reiki, or whichever one it is that gives you relief. At the end goal, the goal is to give you relief. But the real outcome of all of this is to find the relief inside yourself and fill that heart space with genuine self-love and energy rather than some external thing. So that is the long-winded version of what I've been asking of everybody on here. And unfortunately, I am seeing a big shift in the people that listen to my videos because you're stuck. People are stuck. People are getting very pushed back against me when I say that the answer isn't external, the answer is internal. That's cool. We will part ways, and I know that you will play your part in this journey, and you will continue to push forward and fight the government, or fight for the military, or fight for whatever belief it is that you have, until such time as that trauma finds its way to your heart space and you are forced to ask questions. Most of us are awake because we've been through some sort of trauma that pushed us into a space that we didn't want to feel anymore, where our power was taken away from it, our safety was taken away from it. All that stuff was taken away and pushed us up to this yucky feeling of our heart space, and we needed to understand why. And once you can't push it back down anymore, once it's so full that you just can't get it down anymore, you have no choice but to either live in that constant pain and sadness, or and that's usually where that medication comes in. There's so much pain, there's so much trauma. I'm going to get some medication from someone. A psychiatrist will say, here, take some pills that'll suppress those feelings that you're getting. And then you'll be sort of back into the feeling of power because the tablet becomes the control for it rather than your actual body. Hence my start of this 4 years on an antidepressant tablet, 9 days off it. And yeah, I don't feel 100% today, but I feel 100% guaranteed that it's me. It's not some external thing that's making me be able to control my energy for the day. I had bad days where I still felt like shit with that tablet and things. So what's the difference if I have a bad day and feel like shit today? The difference is it's my energy, and I can be proud, and I can have self-love that I've finally got myself away from something that I didn't need in the first place, but I had let myself break down in the spiritual, physical, intellectual, financial, emotional. I let all of that sort of collapse and crumble until there was not anything left but a broken thing, and that's when that tablet comes on. So they like you to stay right in that shitty zone where you are just repressed and morbid, but you can go to work and you have small things on the weekends, oh, don't be so miserable, but, like you go to work and it's just like mediocre and you tolerate your workmates and, just all to get through to that weekend. So you can get on the beers on a Friday night, or Saturday, you might play a bit of golf, and then grind it back to Sunday, wind the dial of excitement back down and back to Monday for that mundane existence. And, maybe you make a little bit more money than what you can afford to with your payments of your houses that they told you had to have, and your fancy cars that you needed, the 2 of them instead of the 1. So you might be able to buy yourself something from Harvey Norman and, fill that little gap for the smallest of things, and then repeat week after week until you retire at 65 or 70 or whatever it is, and you go back to your one little bedroom flat and only turn your air conditioner or your heater on for 15 minutes a day because that's all you could really afford after 50, 60 years of working for this government's taxes and all those sorts of things. So if you're happy with that, great. You probably didn't get this far. If you're looking for something more than that, and if you still can't understand why even being a truther and being awake frustrates you, keeps you anxious, keeps you weird and depressed and that sort of stuff, then the fair chance is that you're starting to wake up to even the fact that being awake isn't enough. Being awake to them is one thing. Stepping past their matrix and stop fighting against them with some sort of replacement of the hierarchical system. I talked about this morning with Ricardo Bosi. They are fighting from a military and a political type sense, and I don't want to manifest a life where that is an actual real thing. I genuinely believe in the spiritual path for me, moving past that. And if I'm forced to still stay in this life the way that it is because the collective can't get past it, because the energy just can't go enough, then I'm going to do my best to make sure that even that version of that reality is the best that it possibly can be by eating healthier, being more spiritual, being more physical, feeding my intellectual brain rather than just watching dead-end videos on YouTube, on Netflix and stuff like that. Financially, investing in things that have longer sustainability in all markets, and just emotionally being able to connect to those traumas and let them go, and living in my heart space rather than living in a place of fear, anxiety, depression, guilt, greed, gluttony, all of those low vibrational things that just keep you shit. So I hope you have a lovely weekend. I hope you found something in here to take away, to go and have a look at what it is that you can do. There's some fantastic people out there to start on your spiritual guidance. I think Eckhart Tolle was probably the turning point for me. It's you've got to be ready for it, but it was a good little journey into just understanding what the ego is and how it drives it, and that the fact that the word ego isn't even actually what, it gets used in such a negative way that if anybody even says operating from the ego sense, it's just straight away it's defense. You're straight back on your heels, thinking that something, something that bad is going to happen because someone said you're an ego or you're operating from the ego. Okay, there's part of us, and it is part of what we do, just like all those other vibrational states are. But Eckhart Tolle or something along those lines is just a good little spoonful just to start making you realise the traits and the conversations and the patterns. That pattern recognition is really important, and then getting yourself into a frame of mind or a state where you say, I'm ready to deal with this trauma, and I don't want to operate the way that I am, and I don't want to be in the matrix anymore, and I don't want to keep being in that cycle anymore, because that's the true way to get yourself the best physical, mental state to continue to fight against these systems if they are to hold on to power for longer than all the hopium people out there are saying. Everyone's saying it's the end of this, it's the end of this month, it's the end of next month, it's the end of this quarter, it's the end of this solar cycle, it's the end of this year. And some people have been saying that for 2 years, 3 years. Some people have been waiting for 20 and think it's going to happen. If you're sitting around waiting for that to happen and you're not working on your spiritual, physical, intellectual, financial, and emotional, the wow factors is where I capture all that stuff on my website, averageaf.com, where I do a lot more talking, surprisingly enough. Or you can go to the Average AF YouTube channel. I have a lot more of the, sort of untangle yourself, unfuck yourself sort of information there. Or just in my Facebook feed, you can find a lot of stuff in the Facebook feed. One day I'm talking about one day I'm talking about COVID. If you want a dose of the COVID stuff, if you not literally, if you want to know a little bit more about how they're segregating us with Black Lives Matters, all I'm trying to do is give you little bits of information that just feed you and fuel you to be critical thinking. And then when you're ready, as I was, took me 10 years of anxiety and depression and 2 years of complete and utter rock bottom, where I'm like, I can't check out of this system, but I can't continue to live the way it is. And the bad guys and the enemies are out there. I just want to just attack all of them. And no matter how many people I attack, new ones just keep showing up. And as soon as you defeat those enemies, you look over and there's people in the West that are doing it, people in the East are doing, China's coming down to wipe our asses, and Ukraine's going to kill us, and Russia's going to blow us up, and America's going to, and the FBI and JFK, so tiring. And then all of a sudden you just go, oh, okay, well, that's just an ego with a traumatic response, and it's coming from in there. So you can brush a lot of that stuff off. It doesn't mean you don't have to work on it. It just means that you have to do it from a place, particularly in the heart space. And trauma is the key to all of that, to give you the strength to continue to fight, so that if we don't win today, if it takes longer, then you've still got the ability to keep going. Because how many people in your truthing feeds at the moment are like, oh, I'm so tired, I'm struggling, I'm anxious, I'm depressed, I'm feeling like shit. Like, why can't they see? Why can't they see? It's not about them seeing, it's about you seeing. They won't see till they're ready to see, because you're still not seeing until about your inner trauma until you'll be ready to see. So I got a lot of work to do. I'll do some meditating, and maybe today or tomorrow I'll come back with a video on cooking. I might come back with a video of building some concrete ponds that I've promised my daughter for her garden, so she can have some little fishy fish in there. Or I might get the shits with something that I see on TV and come back and talk about transgenderism and the destruction of men, like I did with the toxic masculinity video yesterday. So you never know what you're going to get, but you will always get the truth, and that's the main thing for me. So you have a lovely weekend. Thanks for watching.